welcome to the newest episode in Dialogue Topics. I'm Taylor Petrie, editor of Dialogue, a Journal of Mormon Thought. This season, we've been talking about the history of LDS scholarship on specific themes, exploring a topic in depth to consider how dialogue has been a forum for these important issues since its founding. We'll also bring you up to date on these topics with our more recent issues to discuss some of the current trends. All of our topic pages are curated to bring you comprehensive collections of annotated scholarship and may be found at dialoguejournal.com/topic pages, all one word, or navigate there from our homepage. You'll find amazing resources and research on tons of issues. And thanks for your sustaining support. This month, we're looking at the history of scholarship on evolution. Now, this one is a little bit different from others that we've done so far. It's a topic that once dominated the pages of dialogue and was a major controversy for most of the 20th century. However, its moment has largely passed, at least in scholarly circles, the issue is settled. Still, it's useful to track the issue. That's because it remains controversial in certain demographics, and acutely so in our community as a whole. According to the Pew Report, one of the most reputable surveys on religion in American life, more than half of all Latter-day Saints believe that humans always existed in their present form. Only 11% believe that humans evolved due to natural processes, and 32% say that we evolved in some other way. That puts us near the bottom of religious groups that accept natural evolution in America. Compared to Catholics, where only 27% say that humans have always existed in present form and 69% say that humans evolved. Those are flipped among white evangelicals, with 60% denying human evolution and 36% accepting evolution in some form, closer to what Latter-day Saints believe. Only 12% of white evangelicals accept evolution according to natural processes. Evangelical Protestants, Mormons, and Jehovah's Witnesses are the three religious groups least likely to accept evolution. Buddhist, Hindu, and Jewish groups in the United States are the most likely. So, in order to tell the story of how we got here, it's useful to talk about where we came from and how we've evolved over the years. Act 1. Before Dialogue. In 1859, Charles Darwin finally published his book, The Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection. It's impossible to overstate the impact that this book has had. Evolution and geology both gradually transformed American Christianity as it confronted these new scientific advancements. Both of these disciplines challenged simplistic readings of the biblical timeline and creation story, suggesting that the world and the human species was much older than the Bible indicated. When this was coupled with new historical and literary approaches to the Bible that challenged traditional history, Christianity found itself backpedaling and attempting to adapt to these new discoveries. So Latter-day Saints weren't totally cut off from these discussions. But the first major address of them comes on the 50th anniversary of Darwin's Origin of Species. In 1909, the First Presidency issued an authoritative document titled The Origin of Man. This argued for a historical Adam, created as the offspring of God, and denied that human beings evolved. There wasn't much of a middle ground sought here. This 1909 statement had some pretty important consequences because many Latter-day Saints had been receiving education at Eastern schools like Chicago, Columbia, and Harvard, and were bringing this knowledge back to the Saints in Utah. In 1911, at the Brigham Young Academy, a controversy erupted when some of the professors were teaching evolution and critical approaches to the Bible. These were believers who were trying to reconcile these new discoveries with their faith, as modernist Protestants were doing. But many church leaders were uncomfortable with their solutions to the problems, preferring to believe the problems themselves were based on false premises. These conflicts between the modernists, who thought science and belief were compatible, and the fundamentalists, who thought that belief superseded secular knowledge, engulfed Christianity in the first half of the 20th century. For instance, the famous Scopes monkey trial in 1925 was a classic example of the conflicts over evolution in public schools that hinged on modernist and fundamentalist approaches to biblical history. These controversies included Mormons. Modernists like B.H. Roberts, James E. Talmage, Henry Eyring, Sterling McMurrin, and others from this period confronted these issues, including evolution, attempting to find solutions. Fundamentalists like J. Reuben Clark, Joseph Fielding Smith, and others decried such efforts and drew on fundamentalist Christian ideas to respond to those who thought evolution was compatible with faith. The fundamentalists gained the upper hand for a variety of reasons, though they never fully controlled the church. For our history, the most powerful is Joseph Fielding Smith. In 1954, after B.H. Roberts and James E. Talmage had passed away, Joseph Fielding Smith published Man, His Origin and Destiny, just 5 years before the 100th anniversary of Darwin's text on origins. Smith drew heavily on Seventh-day Adventist creationist George McCready Price. Man, His Origin and Destiny was a hugely popular book, attacking evolution and any moderate position that attempted to make it compatible with the Bible. He wrote elsewhere, "If evolution is true, the church is false." Now, the church president at the time, David O. McKay, wasn't particularly happy with this and made clear that there was no official church position on evolution. But when a popular apostle and his son-in-law, Bruce R. McConkie, repeatedly taught that evolution was a satanic idea, it became hard to persuade the general membership to remain neutral on the matter. The fundamentalist approach framed evolution as an existential threat to the truthfulness of the church's teachings. Intellectuals of the church were pushing back against this extremism and had support from other senior church leaders, but they were drowned out. One last issue that I want to point out is that the church membership actually got increasingly conservative on this issue. In 1935, 36% of BYU students denied the evolution of human beings. That's a pretty small minority relative to later periods. By 1973, 81% of BYU students denied evolution. So when Dialogue is born in 1966, this was already an old conversation, more than a century old. There had been many members of the church, including very senior ones, who accepted evolution and sought to reconcile it with their religious views. But as we enter the 1960s, those who accepted evolution were increasingly pushed to the side. It was bound to be an issue that Dialogue took up.
Hi, this is Eric of Face and Hat, a member of the Dialogue Podcast Network, and I was trying to think of a reason why you might want to listen to Face and Hat, and frankly, call it false humility, call it a stupor of thought, but I was having a rough time, so I decided to ask friend of the show, David O. McKay, if he would be so kind.
Have you ever sat down and talked with men in a serious sort of way of their views of life and pondered then on all that they had to say? If not, you should, in some quiet hour. It's a glorious thing to do.
Wow. Thanks, man. That's really cool. Anyway, you should definitely listen to Face and Hat. I mean, David O. McKay thinks it's good.
Dialogue Podcast Network.